Here.
Mayor Murphy,
Here.
General Maxwell,
Here.
Mayor Post,
Here.
Mayor Romero,
Here.
Supervisor Matt Hines,
He is here.
He's here.
and Chairman Jose should be virtual.
Thank you very much. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Call to the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no speakers today.
No speakers today. Moving right along. Item 4. We're just looking for a motion on this item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to move the items on the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 6. Ms. Ortega.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I do have Jamie Brown available to answer questions. Basically, this is a TIP amendment. As you might recall, probably 3 meetings ago, there was a discussion about 22nd Street Bridge and a shortfall there. We identified funding, which is our HERF 26 funding amount, which could be used for this project. That money is earmarked specifically for state highways. And so we were able to utilize some of that funding for the on-ramp and off-ramp at the 22nd Street Bridge, makes up a portion of the construction cost. We also identified that the SR 86 wildlife crossing, which is part of RTA 1, had some RTA monies available. And so we were able to use 2.6 money to swap that. So in essence, taking advantage of that, this is the TIP amendment that does all of that. Happy to answer questions and get into more detail if you'd like.
Do we have any questions for staff?
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7, Ms. Ortega.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have invited Mr. Michael Rossi from Rossi Associates Inc. to come and give a quick overview of the surface transportation reauthorization bill. This is an item that we've been watching closely, obviously impacts all of our funding, and I thought that Mr. Rossi could provide us with at least an up-to-date information on that update. Thank you, Michael.
Welcome, Mr. Rossi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, mayors, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. As I think you all know, I spend most of my time this time of year up in Phoenix, Monday through Thursday, every year at the legislature. Final week, except for appropriations, to hear bills this week. So an absolutely insane week. Yesterday, I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Maybe I'm going to have to call. All of the bills that I'm deeply involved in were heard early yesterday, so it worked out very, very nicely. So I'm really glad I could be here, and thank you. Informal presentation, but feel free after, during, to stop for questions at any point. As I think you're all aware, 2021, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act was adopted, more formally called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, a $1.2 trillion program with 550 billion, B's here in the federal government, in new programs and new initiatives. It had the broadest scope of any Surface Transportation Act in history and added a number of other types of infrastructure, climate initiatives, alternative vehicles, housing, internet infrastructure. And that was both some of the benefits and some of the curses of the 21 plan. And as we start to talk about the plan, and the current plan expires September 30 of this year, 2026. New plan is supposed to be in place by that point in time. There's pretty good bipartisan agreement in doing a program of the same size, inflation adjusted. Now, we've had some pretty serious inflation over the last 5 years. So in real numbers, that's going to look like a much bigger number than the $1.2 trillion number we were looking at in 2021. I'll talk a whole lot more about that because that's really central to what's going to be going on. Just to put some local Arizona political perspective on it, in past years, and I'm going back pretty far, Arizona's Senate and congressional delegation has always had outsized influence for the size of our state. And we've had a lot of power. And even in the 21 Act, we had some key members up there that negotiated important parts of that. Senator Sinema and others played a big role. This year, we're probably as weak or weaker than we have ever been, but we still have some key members in key positions. Senator Kelly, very influential in the caucus, maybe not the most liked of the administration. And Representative Stanton, although representing Central Phoenix, is very sensitive and receptive to Southern Arizona issues and really calls down, I think, to many of you and to me all the time. And then our own Representative Siscomani. And each of them sit on key committees and subcommittees. If anyone cares, I can give you the list of those committees. But we've got people that really care. So you may want to think as a region, are there some of these things that are developing in this act that you as a region may want to comment on? And we have so much more influence on them when we talk to them as a region. And I'll point out a couple items as we go on. 6 months left to get to a new program. They are in the agenda setting phase. There are no actual bill drafts out, so I have no exhibits to show you, no paper on it. The relevant committees have all been meeting for a number of months, and they have had a number of public hearings to talk about a number of elements and directions and what members would like to see in this plan. And there has been a fair amount of bipartisan cooperation, but we're still at the very superficial level. Hopefully, within a couple months, we'll start to see some paper on this, but you're all students of the political process, and you see how functional or dysfunctional things are these days. New plan is supposed to be in place by September 30. If not, there will need to be an extension adopted. There's currently there's still a lot of hope to get there, but there are some really big issues. So I'm going to hit on 4 of those. How much money? I've already suggested, but how big is the program going to be? Where does the money come from? That's going to be the single biggest problem in this authorization. What is the money going to be spent on, and how is it going to be spent? Tons of parallels between the feds and the state. So we're talking about the Fed today, but I can't help but mention the parallels. We've got a fixed gas tax at the feds and the state. It's not indexed for inflation, and just like the HERF doesn't keep pace with our state highway needs or our local needs, there is not enough money in the Federal Transportation Trust Fund to fund the program at the current level, much less at a new level. What are the alternatives? Raising the gas tax. $4.50 when I was driving down here for unleaded, $5.70 for diesel. There is zero appetite for raising the gas tax. State and federal, I don't have to run for office, I'll say it. We have to double both. If we doubled our state gas tax, it would not fully cover inflation. We have 30% of the buying power today that we had the last time the gas tax was changed in 1990. And the federal isn't much better, but I don't see any appetite back there right now to change the federal gas tax. Indexing for inflation really ought to be done in both jurisdictions. Again, I don't see a lot of appetite. That helps down the road, but unless you adjust the base, it doesn't do much of anything for the immediate program. Now, these programs are 5-year programs. It would be more than nothing, but not a lot. Addressing alternative fuel vehicles being discussed at the federal level as well as the state. Generally, we don't have registration fees for vehicles at the federal level, but there is cost or is discussion of a registration fee, an in lieu fee imputing on electric vehicles what they would otherwise be paying in gas tax, or some other sort of fee structure to get them to start to contribute. It's interesting, among the Republican caucus now in Washington, there's almost a backlash against electric and alternative fuel vehicles. I've been here where the Republicans in the state and in the federal government were supportive of alternative fuel vehicles to reduce our reliance on foreign oil and foreign entanglements. Then we came to sort of a neutral place a few years ago. Now, state and federal, there's a backlash. So there's going to be some interest within some sectors to create some sort of fee that supplements the trust fund. Truth is, while the growth of alternative fuel vehicles is materially impacting collections, that alone is not going to solve the transportation funding problem. But it might be a little piece of it. Indexing might be a little piece of it. For the last 5 years, state and federal, we've seen backfilling of transportation with general fund dollars. This has blunted the underfunding of the system and reduced the political emphasis for it. For me, someone that's worked in this airspace longer than I want to admit, we don't even have Republican members of the legislative caucus that are talking about increasing transportation funding. And last year in the state Senate, we didn't even have a transportation committee. And the same sort of problems are happening at the federal level. But there isn't going to be general fund money, significant federal general fund money to backfill this Transportation Act. We're running record deficits in the federal government before factoring in any of the impacts of the war in Iran. So how we are going to fund what's going to be closer to a 1.3, 1.5 trillion dollar project, I don't have an answer. And that's going to be the most vexing part of this. Then what's it going to be spent on? There is no doubt the program is going to contract. The scope, as I mentioned earlier, was wider than it's ever been. It's going to narrow back to roads, bridges, rail, trucking, what the traditionalists see as core infrastructure. But it's not going to eliminate the new things. There are people out there that would simply like to solve the funding problem by eliminating all of the broader scope and believe the rest can be done with efficiencies. That's going to contribute, but it's not going to get us. And I see the gestures among some of you. That's not going to get us there. But there's going to be, after where the money comes from, a very spirited debate on what the money is spent on. And I think you'll definitely see a narrowing, a contraction of what's funded, and a heavier emphasis on the traditional transportation infrastructure projects. And then the last part of it, how is it going to be spent? And the 21 program came in for a lot of criticism because it was so broad and funded so many different things, albeit at pretty high levels. It didn't complete anything really, really well, and it funded the old style program that wasn't reformed or updated at all. So the final really big picture of this year's Surface Transportation Act will be trying to reform that system. And there is bipartisan support in reforming that system. There was enormous frustration across party lines at delays in project delivery in the 21 Act. And I would suggest, without going into it, there were in fact severe political consequences for folks because the project delivery was so slow. So we're going to see streamlining of the federal permitting approval, modification in environmental regulations, but with some pushback from folks that'll think that's going too far. And prediction, who knows? But I think you'll see some trade-off with agreements to streamline and modify regulations in exchange for keeping in the program some of the sustainability, resiliency components that we saw in the 21 Act. After that, there are dozens of other things that'll still be considered. Much of it we don't deal with on a day-to-day basis, but the entire rail system and rail automation, automotive automation and new technologies, grant versus formula funding. And that's one that you folks may well want to think about. And with the federal level, it's a little trickier an analysis, but Mr. Ortega and his staff certainly have the ability to look at that. At the state level, this region is always the loser when they deviate from formula funding and go to earmarking, cherry picking projects, funding with general fund dollars. And that's what they've been doing a lot of the last few years. It's a little different at the federal level, but that's something you should analyze in more detail and consider as a region talking to our delegation about, along with what sort of project priorities do we have as a region. And I know we've got a lot of differences, but we've got an awful lot of similarities also. And when those three key people, but the entire Arizona hears from this area as a region, it really makes a difference to them. So I'll stop there. I could go into way more detail on any of those, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know you've got a lot on your agenda today.
Mayor Romero?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rossi. I really appreciate it. I started to hear your advice in terms of what this council should do to make sure that we are lobbying as much as possible and getting on the map, right? The
Yes.
squeaky wheel usually gets the grease. And so what do you recommend that our strategy be to get in front as opposed to come in at the end asking for what we need?
I think, and Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor, I think there are a couple things you can do based on what we know right now, coming up with a list as a body on preferences versus formula funding and grants. Second thing, general regional priorities. Hopefully, over the next month or so, I'll start to get some drafts of what they're looking at. And what I discussed a little with the PAG staff is I will start to give that to them on a regular basis, every couple of weeks, whatever it is. And then based on some of those details, as we're hearing them, you may well want to weigh in. There are some that are tricky, and even for this body is tricky. Streamlining versus modifying environmental rules. So I know that's not easy, but not to be too long. But there are environmental rules that have also been very, very burdensome at times for this region. I was actively involved, and now longer ago than I can remember, but in the extension of River Road. And we had the money, but it was delayed for 2 years because it clipped 50 feet of a parking lot of a county park. And that 50 feet didn't eliminate any parking spaces that weren't available, didn't impact on any of the playing fields. We took 2 years, and I'm talking a corner as big as this corner of the room, 2 years trying to get that modified. And in the end, we just redesigned the road and moved it, which was tricky. There was a well involved and other things. That wasn't serving any worthwhile purpose for anyone. There was no opposition to it, and there was no way to waive it. So there's room to do a whole lot better. So commenting on some of those things with a little more detail.
And then you said it would be better for us, for Southern Arizona, for formula funding versus grant funding. Can you
At this,
explain a little more?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor, I know that's true for state funding.
Okay.
I have not ever really looked at how we balance formula versus grant funding. But I think you've got some folks that have and can analyze that. But in years past, I know we did better under formula funding. I used to work with Senator McCain, and every time we had a surface transportation authorization, there tend to be a lot of earmarked projects. He refused to let any earmarked projects come to the state of Arizona. And I had enormous respect for the man, but he would not entertain it at all. And it's not as if that money went into the broader pot to be distributed to us. They genuinely took those dollars and distributed it to other states. And I suspect some of those numbers may be the same way now.
Board Member Maxwell? Board Member Hine?
Thank you. And it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. So at the end of January, we heard from our Mexican friends about some passenger rail projects, port improvements and enhancements that they're going to be doing. And I think as a region, we need to be advocating for that as much as we possibly can, because it makes a lot of sense for, frankly, the state, the country, on both sides of the border. During a National Association of Counties conference in DC toward the end of February, I did sit down with staff from Mark Kelly's office, as well as briefly Senator Kelly himself, Ruben Gallego's office, Representative Congressman Stanton's staff. He is on foreign affairs as well as transportation, I think, so that puts him in a place where that makes a lot of sense. And actually, Congressman Siscomani, his staff, but he actually came out of a meeting to spend some time chatting with me as well. And he's our only appropriator. Is that right? He's on appropriations and on the transportation subcommittee. Right. So, and of course, I sat down with Congresswoman Grijalva as well. And all of the meetings were very positive. I know it's pretty early, but it seems a good time to make sure that looking at the corridor that's already kind of approved for rail from Tucson down to Nogales gets included in something from a funding standpoint, and just moves that along to the best of our ability. And I'm curious, what would your recommendations be in terms of this entity or us individually, or in terms of helping to move those kinds of projects along, because they are multi-year projects, and the goal for Mexico is to have passenger rail connecting Mexico City to Nogales, Sonora by 2030.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Hines, and just recently there's been more news about the project and progress in Mexico, long-term gigantic benefits for the state of Arizona. I think within this room, that's widely recognized. Politically, I'm going to be candid and honest, it's challenging at the federal government right now. Your actions, your meetings, I think, are very valuable and continuing. I think for the association, you need to prioritize that relative to other things, but it's certainly something that you could mention to them. It's not a favorable administration for trade and interaction with Mexico. at this point. Again, I've done this a long time. I'm going to speak candidly, but I'll be flip. There are people in the administration that'll fund a train that runs one direction to pick up the people they don't like and drop them in Gold Canyon.
Well, that's still rail. So Grandma taught
I'm
me
being flipped, Mr.
to
Supervisor.
say
but
something nice about
seriously,
anyone.
it-
But yeah.
You know, and this is more than a single Surface Transportation Act. These are, and are what our country ought to be getting back to generational projects, our interstate system, and rebuilding the infrastructure of this country. And components, our foreign trade with Mexico, with Canada, is critically important for the US economy. And we have to have infrastructure to do that, and rail has to be a part of that. A little editorializing there. I hope that's all right, members. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Michael, appreciate the update, especially on the federal one. The feds have always taken a long time to get a reauthorization. It's just not a priority. Infrastructure unfortunately doesn't pull very sexy, and it's generally down until you need it, and then you demand it. So I appreciate you keeping us informed on that, as well as it's something that I think we as a region, as a regional board, can speak to the federal side of it on the things as we see them go through what we'd want. I'm going to take a little different stab at it with you on the state, because there is an appetite at the state legislature. Thus far this year, we've had several meetings with over 20 individual legislators in the room from both parties, from some of the more extremes in the parties. There's a Republican member of the House who's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and he has stood up and said publicly that the HER funding needs to be increased between $600 million and $1 billion, and it will still be short. What there isn't is a consensus on agreement of how we can get there. And I think the only chance we've got, and everybody knows it's not going to happen this year, so we've been pushing the collaboration in these meetings and trying to build a group of legislators, because nobody's going to want to do it right before an election. So we're targeting next year to really get these conversations to a point of potentially introducing something at the legislature. But the fact of the matter is the gas tax is, you said 30, we say 37% at the State Transportation Board of the buying power from 1991. So it has to be addressed. But it's also the efficiencies in the vehicles that are bringing in less money. And if you look at the percentage, our VLT has easily become the largest percentage of funding we have into the HERS funds, where it used to be the gas tax. The alternate for vehicles is a possibility. There are about 5 other processes that states in the United States use to collect funding for their infrastructure. Now, unfortunately, we're going to see one of them on the ballot this year that's going to eliminate or not allow us to consider vehicle miles traveled if it passes. Well, every tax for infrastructure is a vehicle miles traveled. I could argue that a gas tax is a vehicle miles traveled tax. So it doesn't make any sense. Hopefully there will be some support not to let that get through. But I do believe whatever the solution is going to be, it's going to be a group of alternatives. You may see something on the gas tax, something that the legislature can stand. You may see something on the alternative vehicles, fuel vehicles, that the legislature can stand. But there's a ton of different ways, but got to get the trucking industry and all the different industries that make their living on our roads. The reason RTA was so important for us is the money that we've got available at the state legislature in the state system to fund investment in expansion or improvements, almost nothing. Every dollar is going to the maintenance and preservation of the roads. I mean, 83% of our state highway funds go towards preservation of those roads. Thus, the legislature and Representative Biasucci, who's been at all these conversations and realizes we need to fix it, was one of the first ones to figure it out. They're doing it by direct budget apportionment. And I think there's roughly 28 bills for roads and improvements, all in rural, because the Casa Grande Accords define how we signed this up, all in rural counties, because they have, we think we were going to be in trouble. They're in worse shape than we are. So they're learning that they're fighting with each other on who gets to fund their projects and not. And if you're in the majority party. If you're in the minority party, you're not going to get any road projects. So I think everybody realized that it has to be done. And as we roll those ideas out, if we could come to consensus among ourselves
diverse views on this stuff, and then make those statements, I think would help in the state legislature as well. But to me, that's way more important than the federal one. The feds will fund it to some level, not as much, but the state one we have to solve because it's in a bad place. Any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, General Maxwell, when I was asked to come down, it sort of varied between state, combined state and federal. And I, in fact, had exhibits for state, but at the final agenda item, it was federal. But everything you're saying is exactly right. And even a few more details. We have not sold any additional gas in the state of Arizona since 2017. Our population has grown 13%, but alternate fuel vehicles and increased efficiencies is keeping the fuel sales level of a fixed gas tax. So it continues to erode. And I have an amazing chart put together with the County Supervisors Association that I'll send over, or if you invite me back to talk about that, we'll talk about that. We have 2 or 3 bills that are tinkering at the fringes to add a little to HERF, but at the same time, and why I'm a little more frustrated, we've got the majority leader running a bill for a gas tax holiday in the Pinal and Maricopa region for the summer. She's running another bill saying they should repeal the federal gas tax. So we do not have the kind of legislative leaders we used to on this. Maybe we get there. Sadly, in the legislature requires a 2/3 majority. Whatever happens in November, no one's going to have a 2/3 majority. And proposition from a couple of years ago now requires that any increase in the gas tax passes by 60%, not 50%. So what you all did on the RTA was critically important. And down the road, you may need to review doing even more there. We're one of the only counties that has that ability and flexibility. But yeah, there's a train wreck that was a slow motion train wreck that is really accelerating at the state because of inflation, because of adoption of alternate fuel vehicles. Maybe it's slowed for a year or two. It's going to pick back up. We're going to have to do something. We can't fund maintenance of our system with the existing funding, much less growth, expansion, safety improvements. I could go on and on. I know we're limited on time. Have me back anytime and we'll talk a lot about the state.
Board Member Romero and then Board Member Hine.
Yeah, no, definitely we should invite Mr. Rossi back for updates, both federal and state. He did mention for PAG to start putting together a list of priorities for funding. And I think I differ a little bit with Board Member Maxwell. I think formula funds in this day and age are going to be better for Southern Arizona. The city of Tucson and Pima County, I know, have been successful with winning several grants in a different administration. So I think in this day and age, formula funds will be more secure. So if we can, Mr. Chair, move towards in a direction, I don't want to give a motion or anything like that, but move towards a direction of creating those lists and putting together our preferences as a regional council so that Mr. Rossi and ourselves have some paperwork to show our congressional delegation that these are the priorities of Southern Arizona, or at least Pima County as a region. When we do meet with them, I get to meet with, I'm lucky to be able to visit with our senators and our congressional delegation members. And so when that happens, I think we should be ready in terms of priorities. Are there timelines? Like, do we have to have it like next month, or are there any timelines that we?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Romero, over the next month. I think you're fine over the next month to month and a half, but if you can start to get some things that we can send to at least our delegation, these key people, but probably the whole delegation, that timing would be good. It is anybody's guess if they stay on track or not. Again, you all see what's going on at the federal government these days. But there is a deadline, September 30. The hearing process will be coming up, and the more you can give our members, I mean, they really appreciate that kind of input. And there are some of these things that go even beyond our boundaries. I formally represent Santa Cruz County. I do work with the others. They all, I think, benefit more from formula funding. I just hadn't gone through it than the earmarks. Even under this last program, we did very well in some areas, broadband and a variety, not as well in others.
Awesome. Thank you. This is going to deviate a little bit, but I was a legislator for 4 years from 2009 to 2013, as you know. And as I said to the acting chair, actually it was Andy Biggs of the Appropriations Committee in a particularly contentious meeting, you get what you pay for. And I guess, is there any hope that we will be able to professionalize the legislature and raise what they get $24,000 a year plus a per diem, right? I know this doesn't sound very transportation or infrastructure, but this is incredibly, incredibly important that we have a professional group of people doing this work for us. And I'm just curious, will we see on the ballot this year a way to do what, frankly, the Tucson City Council did, which was to align with county supervisor pay compensation, as opposed to 20K, 50K more, whatever. It was just, hey, we already pay this group of elected officials one thing, let's have it aligned for this municipality. The people passed it by like 200 votes or something, or 300. But that seems like a fair way to approach things to professionalize our legislature at the state level. And I'm just curious if there's going to be an opportunity for us to do that this fall.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to suggest that Mr. Rossi can certainly answer the question, but we need to stay to the federal level at this point. What I will do and commit to you is I'll bring back a state and fed item for you and for discussion on where we can talk about the state and the federal. And I apologize, it didn't occur to me to do that because I know this is really hot on everybody's mind right now. But Mr. Rossi, if you don't mind, you can answer the question. But then after that, I think we should stay focused on the federal side, at least the way it was agendized. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Hines, and even my schedule after next week gets more flexible. So I'm happy to come back whenever you'd like. There is a House or a Senate concurrent resolution to put a significant salary increase on the ballot, brought forward by Senator Kavanaugh. There is some polling out there that shows our legislature is polling incredibly poorly these days. And when this question was asked by good polling companies, there was about a 28% receptiveness to a legislative salary increase. Now, the approach of the mayor in the city of Tucson was brilliant. And when they polled indexing it to another office like the supervisors, it went way up. It still didn't get a majority, but it went way up. So an extremely fascinating approach. And just because I'm creative, I will tie it back to our theme of transportation, maybe not federal. Senator Kavanaugh has pushed his initiative because he said there has been no increase in legislative salaries since 1990. We have to do this. And I've met with him repeatedly and said, Senator Kavanaugh, there has been no increase in the gas tax since 1990. Refer them both. Zero.
Mr. Chairman, for future meetings, I will bring back an item that's state and federal legislation, and that way you all can chat through it. In the meantime, what I'll do is send out a note to all the jurisdictions, asking them for their regional thoughts or regional priorities, just based on having to get that back to Mr. Rossi and his team within the next 30 days. Unlikely that I'll be able to bring this back to you in time for you to weigh in on it. So I'll suggest to the staff that they run that through you. I will just compile all of it and then just send the whole list up. And I'll copy you with that when that's transmitted. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that we can do that. Thank you.
That
Mr.
sounds
Chairman.
good. Thank you very much, Mr. Ortega. Any other questions for Mr. Rossi? Thank you very much, Michael.
Chairman, members, thank you very much. It was a pleasure appearing before you today.
Thank you. Item 8, Mr. Ortega.
Mr. Chairman, since we are a little over time now, I'll just give you an overview of this. And in essence, this is just a follow-up to put this and keep this on your radar. So if you recall, one of the elements was the safety ADA and active transportation element within the RTA Next. We have tremendous amounts of data within the PAG organization that your organizations can use and can inform some of the conversations around safety. We will be the clearinghouse, and we can certainly assist and help with that. Ultimately, I will tell you that there's two components to that element. One of them is the data, which we have available, and we'll share that with you. But the second is public feedback or input. That's where you all come in. And so as we allocate those dollars and we start doling them out, if you will, it's an opportunity for you to go through whatever process you'd like to within your jurisdictions to make sure that that component is in fact addressed as we go forward. Mr. Chairman, we do have folks here that can answer questions if you have any questions, but basically it was a reminder and just an update that we are working with your jurisdictions to make sure that we are in a coordinated effort. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do board members have any questions on this particular item? Hearing none. Who had one?
That was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Board Member Hines.
Not so much I guess more of just a statement because I also happen to represent the supervisors on the Board of Health, and this has been an issue, specifically safety. So reducing car crash related fatalities and serious injuries is now a focus of the Pima County Health Department's updated Community Health Improvement Plan based on last year's Community Health Needs Assessment that was conducted. So I just hope that we definitely look at very seriously, as the staff, as the memo says, corrective actions at the project level and appropriate improvements at the program level, as they note, to ensure that we apply evidence-based solutions to all of our projects surrounding to increase safety and reduce harm for our residents. And that is definitely now a major priority for the health department and therefore for the county.
Thank you for those comments. Any others? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item 9. Mr. Ortega?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at the last meeting, you had all asked that we look at the committees and the committee structures. We have provided that to you. It's in your packets. Just very simplistically, I think that there's an opportunity to really revisit most of those committees and really challenge ourselves to say, hey, are they doing what we need them to do? And are they bringing value in terms of the delivery of the services, all inclusive, not just RTA, but also the PAG services as well. So a couple things, I'll be sending you a note about the CART committee that's under the RTA. Those members' terms expire on June 30. And so I'll need some reappointments there. Just to refresh your memory on that, it's now a 15-member committee. 8 from the jurisdictions, 7 at large, 4 need to reside in the city of Tucson. 4 of them have specific expertise that are listed, and I'll get all that to you. So as an example, we need to reconvene that or reconstitute, make sure that we get that going. There's other groups like the Wildlife Linkages Working Group, which has been dormant for quite a while. We need to refresh that. It's not even listed here, but we need to refresh that and say, hey, let's have a conversation around that. And so those are the kinds of things that I see us doing going forward. I'm trying to gather you all for a retreat. And if we can find a date eventually, maybe in the next year or so, this is one of the topics that I'd like to get into with you and go through and dissect and make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of what your expectations are of those committees, so then we can convey to them what your thoughts are. I have had requests for review of bylaws of committees. Happy to do that. But I think the first order of business is for you all to identify and decide if the committee structures as we've got outlined are in fact the direction we want to go in. So I gave you a list of, we gave you a list of the committees. We also gave you a list of the members of all of the committees. They're all listed there for you. And so like I said, I'll be sending you a note. The CART is the one that we need to really focus on because that is starting July 1 and we want to hit the ground running. So Mr. Chairman, Sheila and I are available to answer any questions if you have any. Happy to do so.
Are there any questions for this item? Board Member Romero?
Yeah, we had conversations previously on the committees and their reporting structure and also us putting them to work. Right? A lot of the committees were dormant. They were not advising the regional council. And what we noticed some time ago, and I had mentioned that at this table here before, is that the committee fact sheet states that the PAG Management Committee makes recommendations to the PAG Executive Director. And previously, the Management Committee made recommendations directly to the PAG Regional Council. I really want to make sure that we go back to the previous language, that we change the fact sheet to reflect that we would like the Management Committee to make recommendations to the Regional Council.
Mr. Chairman, as you recall, Madam Mayor, as you recall, part of the RTA restructuring, when we went through that, we actually changed the TMC in the admin code as well as the CART to be advisory directly to the board. The old language was to the executive director. So we're going through that exercise now. And so what you see there is some dated language, but the spirit and intent is for those advisory committees to be advisory to you. And the staff certainly can provide feedback and thoughts to you in those sessions. But clearly, I want to make sure that particularly the citizens groups, like the CART, has an advisory role to you directly with no filter. And so that's really been the spirit and intent. It's been codified in the admin code. And so it's memorialized now. I think we're solid there. We just have to go through the rest of these now.
Are we moving in terms of the Management Committee as well?
All of it.
Because I think that it's, even though they're going to have, all the committees are going to have direct communication with the executive director, they're really advisory, citizen advisory to, or technical advisory to the regional council or the RTA board. And that's how it should go back to. One of the other issues that the city of Tucson had previously indicated we were not comfortable with is that in the past, our technical experts on the Transportation Planning Committee as well as and the TIP subcommittee were not allowed to make programming recommendations to the board about RTA funds. I just want to make sure that our staff who have the best understanding of the projects, 100% of the time more than I do. I want to make sure that our staff can schedule at the meeting level the issues that they need to talk about. So in order to be able to do that, they need to be able to add items to the agenda when they're having their subcommittee meetings or committee meetings to be able to recommend to the regional council and the RTA board.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mayor Romero. So I think I mentioned before, most all of the committees, and the only reason I say most all, because I don't know that every single one of them, the agendas now include future agenda items that the staff can bring up or the committee members can bring up and have on the future agenda. So I think that addresses that. Keep in mind, I do want to point one thing out. The Technical Management Committee and the Management Committee, they have subcommittees. And so those subcommittees would obviously filter back through those, we'll say, main committees to come to an advisory role to the regional council or the RTA board. But by and large, the ones that I'm focused on are those that have the strong citizen component to make sure that you are getting information directly from those committees.
And then the last comment is the EPAC committee. We should be empowering the EPAC committee to be more meaningfully engaged in regional environmental or climate resiliency initiatives. For example, the EPAC was completely sidelined and ignored, and they were unable to make recommendations for programming the carbon reduction program funds that we had received under the Biden administration, which were in the tune of millions of dollars. I think it was $11 million. And they were never consulted to make recommendations for carbon reduction or air quality or climate action funding. So just want to make sure that we are reversing that trend that had been happening of not consulting the experts as well. And I completely hear you that we want to make sure that the citizens oversight and all the citizens advisory committees have very clear advisory roles with us as well. But the technical committees, the engineers, the environmental, public health, all these experts that make up our committees to advise us also have the ability to advise the regional council on these types of issues.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mayor Romero. Around this table, we like engineers, so we think they're pretty amazing. But the
You
EPAC.
all have your purpose.
Yeah, we have our purpose. Yes, we do. The EPAC in particular, I think you saw at one of the previous meetings, the actual, I believe, call it work list for the coming year and some of the things they want to focus on. But you also have seen a difference in the carbon reduction program funding as well. And the approach to that was very open, very collaborative. I don't recall that we went directly to the EPAC for their opinion or their thoughts on it, but it was very open with the jurisdictional partners, most of which also sit on the EPAC. So the idea is to be as open and transparent in those conversations as possible. And I think you'll see over time that restructuring will help with that. And so I appreciate those comments because we'll make a note of them. We'll make sure that we address them as we go forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Board Member Maxwell?
Hopefully, Mr. Chair, this will be just a quick question. So one of the questions I've been asked more in the last 2 weeks than before is with the desire to ensure we have accountability under the next RTA, how do people apply for the at-large positions of the CART? They know they can go to their municipalities and see if they can, but if they want to be one of those 7 at-large members, how can people go about doing that?
So, Mr. Chairman, great question. So what I'm proposing is that we'll let you know that we're going to send out a solicitation, and we'll publicly, post that or notice that, and let folks know. We'll give that to you so you can send it out to folks as well. But the idea and the intent is that folks would send in a letter of interest, which then we will present to you all, and then you'll make a decision on those 7 at-large positions.
Okay. Mr. Chair, thank you. Mike.
Anybody else? Hearing none, moving right along. Item 10.
Mr. Chair and members of Regional Council, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Amirul Rajiv. Dr. Amirul Rajiv is the Safety Program Manager at ADOT, where he leads State Highway Safety Improvement Program, Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and the Arizona Safety Circuit Rider Program. He is a licensed professional engineer and a certified professional traffic operations engineer. Dr. Rajiv earned his PhD from ASU with a focus on sustainable infrastructure. He is here today to provide an update on the strategic safety performance projections and targets, and to recommend adopting the state safety projections and targets for the PAG region. Floor is yours, Dr. Rajiv.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Amirul Rajiv. I am the Safety Program Manager with the MPD Division at ADOT. Today, I'll be presenting the Arizona Safety Performance Projection Targets for the year 2026. Next slide, please. So the Safety Performance Targets is developed through the FHWA, which is the Federal Highway Administration. required criteria. So we have to develop this is a required from FHWA that every state should develop the safety performance projections for each year, and the development should have 5 criteria. So those are the number of fatalities, number of serious injuries, fatality rate, which is per 100 million vehicle miles travel, serious injury rate similar to the fatality rate as per 100 million vehicle miles travels, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The non-motorized fatalities or serious injuries are the number of vulnerable road users, fatalities and serious injuries. So these are the 5 value we have to come up the targets for year 2026. So before dive into the 2026 numbers, I want to give you an overview how is the data look like for the year 2024. In the year 2024, the fatalities decreased by 6% from year 2023. It reduced to 1,229 compared to 1,308. Also, the serious injury also decreased by 5%. It reduced to 3,582 compared to 3,786. In year 2024, the non-motorized fatalities, which is the vulnerable road user fatalities, decreased by almost 3%, which is the 307 compared to 317. However, the non-motorized serious injury increased, while the fatalities decreased for the non-motorized category, but the serious injury increased by 6%, which increased to 595 compared to 561. Also, the statewide vehicle mile travel decreased 6.87% from 2023 to 2024, and this data was obtained from the ADOT extent and travel reports. So these are some previous data for the year 2024. Now we will move forward with the target for the year 2026. Next slide, please. So here is the little background how we come up with the values or the targets. It was said that annual targets were set based on a reduction of 20% by 2030. So this was the target, like the base year is 2023, and by year 2030 we should see a 20% reduction of data of fatalities and serious injury data compared to year 2023. So this supports Arizona's Governor's Office and 2024 ADOT Strategic Highway Safety Plan goal. With this methodology, in year 2023, the fatalities was 1,308, and our target to reduce this by 20%, which is resulted in 1,046 by year 2030. So these are the target that we are planning that we should see a reduction, 20% crash reduction by the year 2030, and the total number would be like 1,046 for the fatalities. And for serious injury, with 20% reduction by year 2030, it should be 3,028. And number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injury, we could see a 20% reduction, which account for 702 crashes compared to 878. So these are the target methodology that it supports the Governor's Office of Highway, and it is taken that we should reduce crashes by 20% by year 2030. Next slide, please. So here is the estimation we did ourselves, the calculation. So if you see the year 2026, the fatalities rate, number of fatalities, our target is not more than 1,194, and the 5-year rolling average is 1,264.8. So FHWA actually wants the report or the values, the previous 5-year rolling averages, not the actual value, which is 1194, but the FHW wants the target is the 5-year rolling average, which is actually the target is like 12.64. So state of Arizona should see not more than 1,264 crashes in the year 2026. That is the target, which is the 5-year rolling average for the fatalities. And now if you go to the, I think in the middle column, which is the fatality rate, in the year 2026, it says 1.52. The fatality rate should be this value. However, the reporting value, which is the 5-year rolling averages value, it is 1.645. So this is just a one slide of how we calculate the data, but I have some historical value I will show in the next. But this just to give you an idea, like how we calculate the data. The base year here is 2023, which is the 1308 fatalities, and our target in year 2030 we should see the crash not more than 1046 in fatalities. So next slide, please. This is a historical data from year 2010 to until year 2026. We see in 2026 the actual target we want, the fatality should not be more than 1194, but which the 5-year rolling averages gives us the value higher than the actual value, which is 1264. So with respect to the FHW guideline, our reporting value is 1264, so that our target is the 5-year rolling averages value should not be more than 1264 in case of fatalities. We have another 4 criteria. So this is the fatalities historical value. Next slide, please. This is the fatality rate historical value from year 2010 to year 2026. In year 2026, the 5-year rolling averages value is 1.645. This is the target. The rate should be less than 1.645 in year 2026. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the number of serious injury historical values for year 2010 to 2026. In 2026, the 5-year rolling averages value is 3,671.4. So this is the target. The serious injury rate should be less than this value with the 5-year rolling average value. Next slide, please. This is the injury rate similar to the fatality rate is historical value from 2010 to 2026, and this is like the value target value is 4.756, which is the 5-year rolling averages value. Excuse me. Next slide, please. This is the vulnerable road users, or you can say non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So here is the combined value of fatalities and serious injuries from year 2010 to 2026. In year 2026, the actual value should not be more than 803. However, the 5-year rolling average value is higher than this, which is 862.8. So these are the 5 criteria we should report to FHWA. Next slide, please. This is just a summary what I have presented already. These are the values we should have not more than this value. These are the target for year 2026. So if you see in a glance that the target value, which is the far right column, number of fatalities should not be more than 1264, which is the 5-year rolling average value. Rate of fatalities should not be more than 1.645. Number of serious injury should be not more than 3,671. Rate of serious injury should not be more than 4.756, and the number of vulnerable road users or fatalities and serious injury should not be more than 862.8. So these are the values we ADOT came up with, and we distributed these results to all the MPOs to adopt these values. Next slide, please. So here's some literature here that MPOs that choose to set separate projections, that means if they want to develop their own, they can do it. So if they want to do separately their own, they must report the vehicle tribal estimate used and the methodology to develop this estimate. And they should maximize use of highway performance metric system data when preparing estimates. So projections or these targets are reported to ADOT and made available to FHWA upon request if MPO choose to develop their own. MPOs established targets 180 days after state. So state typically develop this the end of August, and MPO has 6 months to develop their own or adopt ADOT developed values. So MPO's targets are not included in the assessment of whether a state met or made significant progress toward meeting its targets. So, however, if the MPOs choose to develop their own, that's fine. If not, ADOT recommends adopting state safety performance projection targets. So we actually recommend them to adopt ADOT's developed value so that they don't need to develop their own. And if MPOs choose to adopt ADOT's numbers, they should send us a confirmation email or confirmation letter, depending on their if they want to adopt in perpetuity or not. So next slide, please. This is some available resources if you want to see the number of crashes or serious injury. There has a crash facts link in ADOT public websites. You can go and download the crash data. Also, if you want to see the FHWA safety performance guidelines or the previous historical data, you can go to the FHWA website. So these are some resources you have. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think this is the end of my presentations. Now is open for question or discussion. I'll be happy to answer any if you have any question or any suggestion.
Does the board have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions, staff would like a motion to accept the ADOT safety performance projections in perpetuity. The reason for that is we're the only ones in the state that don't do that. We've been bringing it to you every year. I'm happy to bring reports to you, but if you don't mind, this would be one where I think we should follow everybody else in this case. So.
Motion to accept.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 11, future agenda items. Hearing none, motion to adjourn.
So move.
We are adjourned.
I'll convene the RTA meeting and call it to order. And Jackie, if we can do a roll call, please.
Mayor Winfield,
Here.
Mayor Murphy,
Here.
Mayor Valenzuela. General Maxwell,
Here.
Mayor Post,
Here.
Mayor Romero. Here. Supervisor Hines,
Present.
and Chairman Jose should be online.
Yeah, our thing went
Oh,
Yeah.
haywire a long time ago.
is Chairman Jose connected? Okay,
He was here for most of the PAG meeting.
I asked him to run it, he asked me to run it, and
Yeah.
We ran it together.
Didn't go well.
yeah.
Item number 2 is called to the audience. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no speakers this time.
Thank you. Item number 3 is the meeting summary. I'll entertain a motion of approval.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is the consent agenda items.
Move to pass.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is the RTA next election results, quarterly analysis reporting, and next steps. Mr. Ortega.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. First, congratulations to you all for your leadership. I think that you have demonstrated that leadership in a way that many maybe didn't think possible. And I think the results speak for themselves. I think the role that you took on, not only in generating a plan that was diverse and addressed the diversity of this region, but also your effort to educate folks really was demonstrated in the results. We've given you that information. We provided that for you, so I won't reiterate it here, but it was definitely, I'll call it a mandate from the voters that they want infrastructure and they want it done, quite frankly, which I'll get to here in a minute. Second thing I wanted to point out is the timer says 0 now. We're thinking about what the next timer is. Maybe it's Christmas, maybe it's the end of the year. I don't know. But I did want to point that out because when we started that, one of the first meetings, that was 182. It's 182 days, and it just seems to have flown by. But here we are. Also, with regard to the RTA Next, I mentioned earlier, I am trying to find a date for a retreat for you all. We'll try to keep it within a couple hours, maybe 3 at the most. But what I'm really looking for there is to chart out some of the steps that we are seeing as next steps. I'm going to go over them here in a bit, but it's really an opportunity for you to get into some of the detail and hear what the approach is going to be, because we've got a lot of work in front of us. So when it comes to delivery, I want to let you know what we're doing right now and how I'm preparing, or we're preparing to move forward, keeping in mind that the RTA Next tax is actually starting to collect next Wednesday. So it's around the corner. And so I want to make sure that you all know how we're preparing ourselves and what we're doing. There's some logistics that are necessary. But first of all, I wanted to let you know, and I'll go element by element. On the roadway element, what I've decided to do is basically allow the jurisdictions that are ready to go now a pre-authorization. I've received one formal request. I've received one informal request, which are going to translate, and I expect I'll get more. So I just wanted to walk you through that because I want you to understand that when we bring that to you, those IGAs to you, you're going to see where expenditures have already occurred from April 1 to whenever we get those IGAs in place. There's 2 basic criteria that are important for me to issue an authorization to proceed. One is that we get an IGA in place before any reimbursement is made. And so those IGAs are extremely important because they codify and memorialize the relationships between the RTA board and the jurisdiction. Part of that is to establish and populate a matrix, a performance matrix. And what that will do is it will give us a cash flow, but it'll also give us performance measures and metrics that we're going to be testing against. So completion of right-of-way acquisition, design, preliminary design, there'll be a variety of them. I think there's 11 or 12 per project. So that's really important. But the other key component to that is that the agency or the jurisdiction is able to carry the money, right? So if you're able to carry the dollars for a few weeks or several weeks, maybe a few months, then that will be okay, and we'll make sure that we get those done. But I wanted to let you know that because you're going to see those come back, and you're going to maybe scratch your head and say, well, why are they already working on this if we don't have IGAs? Because I think it's important that we demonstrate that we're ready to go. And there's some instances where we expect there's going to be construction happening as early as this summer. This summer, we might be inviting you all to groundbreaking if some of the things that we're working on with the jurisdictional partners come to pass. The other thing that we're doing is organizing what we're calling advanced teams. And the advanced teams, or advanced design and delivery teams, what we're going to do is really look at all of the corridors that are in the plan. We'll focus on the first period, but we're going to really look at first and second periods initially. The idea is for us to go out right now and start looking at issues within those corridors. So it can be anything from there's a right-of-way challenge, there's a utility challenge, there's a WAPA easement that we've got to address, but it could also be there's a railroad, right? Or there's other issues, including inflation or other unforeseen challenges. We're going to do that, immediately. As a matter of fact, we've already talked about sending out some RFPs for folks to come in and help us with that, because that will help us in populating those matrices, those performance matrix. So that way, way ahead of time that if there's a challenge that we can address. Moving on to the safety and ADA, I mentioned that earlier. We've got some data for you. We're ready to help with that. Again, that will really be a function of you're going to drive that. You as the jurisdictions will drive that. We'll help you, and we're going to guide in terms of, hey, there's a pretty serious area. I know that Supervisor Hines mentioned some challenges on Valencia Road. We'll look at those and we'll say, hey, you know what? What can we do to improve some of that safety challenge that we've got there? Moving on to arterial reconstruction or rehabilitation, same basic thing. I know the city of Tucson's already got a map out. It's a draft, which is really exciting because they're waiting for really April 1 to come, and then they're going to kickstart that. And there's some roads on that map that we heard very loud and clear from the public, specifically Irvington and Pantano, and the mayor and I like Silverbell. But there are some roads there that the public really beat us up on and said, hey, we need these fixed. And so we think we can get those under construction, working with our partner at the city this summer. So we're pretty excited about that. Moving on to the environmental, again, going to take your lead. However, I mentioned in my comments earlier on the committees, the environmental, the wildlife linkages working group needs to be, basically re-upped, if you will, reconstituted, and we've got to get those folks around the table. They bring up sensitivity, they bring expertise that we don't have. And so we're going to encourage them to come to the table and work with all of us to identify some of those projects. And then last but not least, transit. We've already looked at the IGAs. We are okay through the end of June in our current IGA structure, so we don't need to scramble for April 1. And so it gives us an opportunity to extend that IGA if we need to, but we can have that discussion. But more importantly, it gives us some time to really look at the expansion of service. And so we're working particularly with the Suntran folks to what that looks like. What is that going to entail, and what is that expansion of service across the entirety of the region? But there's a couple of other pieces, safety and security. I know that the city of Tucson has looked at that. We're working to help with that so that they can kick that off as early as maybe next week. So we're working with them on what that might be. We're also going to give pre-authorization on the bus rapid transit because that's a federal grant opportunity. So we don't want to be the holdup there. And I think what you'll find is on all of these, what I've suggested to the staff, the goal is that we are not the holdup. We're not the bureaucracy that's going to hold up construction or getting things out the door. Now, we have to be sensitive. Obviously, the bureaucracy is important to make sure we have memorialized understandings and agreements and those kinds of things. But we're going to work very closely with you all to make sure that if we need an IGA in a hurry, because, just pick the answer, that we can call you and say, hey, we need a virtual meeting or a special meeting at 5 o'clock on a Thursday. And we'll let you know, obviously, with as much advance notice. But those are the kinds of things where I'm going to be looking to you to help us with those things. Now, as far as what that looks like going forward, I'm hoping we can get into a regular and a routine schedule for meetings, and we don't have to do special. But I'm suspecting that early on, we're probably going to have some special meetings just because of the magnitude of work that we're trying to get out the door. What I'll leave you with is this, just a kind of numbers. I like numbers. We are expecting to put out on the street about $1 billion in the first 5 to 6 years. When you do the math on that, that's about $200 million a year. That is about 3 to 4 times more than we currently put out. When we're putting out 50 to 70 million a year, and our goal is 200 million a year, that is very, very significant in terms of the investment in the community. Now, I will also tell you that the goal is RTA 1 projects are completed in that first period. That's what we've told everybody. That's really what our focus is. Even those in the RTA next, we're going to do our best to get those completed as well. But if we can keep this pace up, then you look at down the road, the completion of the program in its entirety, with the exception of ongoing projects like transit, could be completed as in the 16 to 18 year. So we're not having a conversation the 19th year about projects that aren't complete. So our goal, and I believe very, very achievable, is to complete these projects within the 18-year timeframe, so that in the 18th year, we can go back to the voters with RTA 3 and say, hey, look at what we've done, and we can demonstrate our ability to deliver within this region. So we do have a presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Rick. Well, actually, let me go to Melanie first, just to give a quick closeout on our outreach efforts. I think she's got some pretty amazing numbers there that she'll share with you.
And that's why we need lots of engineers, right?
Translate.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Just a quick recap of some of the outreach. So since August 2025, when you all approved the plan, we were able to complete over 140 presentations and events to share information about RTA Next. And we were able to engage over 7,700 people. And 45 of those events occurred in the month of February. So thank you so much to your staff who helped put those together. We only had one instance where we sent mayor to the wrong location on a wrong date, but just once. other than that, we were able to spread the word. So thank you to you and your staff. And then on the digital side, we were able to have over 6 million impressions. That included media advertising, social media, bilingual flyers that were on the buses and wayfinding kiosks and library flyers. So again, thank you to you and your staff for helping us connect with the communities and disseminate that educational information so voters could make an informed decision.
Thank you, Melanie. Mr. Chairman, it's really close to 1:30. We can continue with our presentation, and just so you know, what you will hear next is the closeout of 2006 RTA program. And it's probably about a 10, 15-minute presentation, or we can break. What I did suggest to you in my note is that there is an item on the agenda for an accountability pledge, which we would like to make it at 1:30 if we could, but we don't have to. I think we could go. So if you want to take a little bit of a break and do that, or go to that item
Yeah.
and consider it, and then we can come back to this if you'd like, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
I would go to that item.
Okay.
And just complete it because I had a couple of words on it.
Excellent. Very good.
Connected with it.
Very good.
Then we can come back. And I wouldn't expect we're going to come back very long on there. Yes.
If I could, I'd like to make one comment.
Yeah.
And that's just a reminder, as Executive Director Ortega pointed out, since the press is here, I want to make sure that they hear it as well. Is yes, April 1st, the RTA next tax starts, but as part of our consent agenda on Resolution 2026-009, which authorizes that tax, it also ceases the original RTA 1 tax. So for those out there who still believe this is going to result in them paying higher sales tax, there will be no change to the sales tax. Just want to make sure that that resolution was highlighted.
Right. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
We have to. I just wanted to first and foremost congratulate everyone. Mr. Ortega, thank you so much for leading us and to helping us put together a good plan. And really presenting to the community and our county, our residents, a really clear path to accountability. I know we're going to do an accountability pledge right now, but all of us working together to be clear about a citizen oversight committee, I believe helped a lot. But happy because in every single jurisdiction, the RTA next passed. And the city of Tucson is no different, right? In each and every one of our wards, the RTA next passed. And so I know that that was because we were solidly on the same page as a board and really held hands and moved forward and talked to our constituents about how important it was to continue with the additional investment in our infrastructure. And so I just wanted to make sure that I brought that I brought that to the table before we move on to the accountability pledge. Congratulations to all. The work begins. Or continues in our case, but I'm happy that it was a win for this residents of Tucson and a win for all of the towns within our region and a win for all of us. Looking forward to seeing results of this investment and continuing to work with each and every one of you to make all of this work happen.
Thank you. And I'll just piggyback off of that on to item number 6. Everybody on this table, this room, our region, thanks for everybody's efforts for bringing this new transportation plan forward. Thanks to the collaborative efforts that you mentioned. At times a little rocky, but as I was out there presenting, always talking about the compromise plan, right? The collaborative plan. It was never going to be my plan or a perfect plan because there's 9 of us around this table. To the comments earlier about the PAG and RTA committees, the CAC, CART, TMC, thanks for everybody's efforts on there. I wouldn't want to get too far out on naming lots of people because then you always lose somebody out. But I do have to call out Tom McGovern from CAC. That was yeoman's effort to keep it together, keep it moving forward. To the staff for shepherding this forward. I felt like I got an email from Melanie every day. Even when she told me to go to the wrong place, that's okay. I have no hard feelings on it, but congratulations to staff and just to call out the executive director, Mr. Ortega, received the Person of the Year award from the ATB yesterday morning. So I really appreciate that. And, as Melanie mentioned, the, constant outreach, and education, which was, very important. I think in the Green Valley, Sahuarita area, it was 69%, yes, down in that area. So, I was very grateful for that. To the stakeholders, everybody that was involved, from ATB for that nice award. SALC, I have to, as General Maxwell always says, he's the only non-elected official. And he did yeoman's effort to try to get all of us together and could really be the only one sort of could speak to everybody, individually. I appreciate that. PIMA Connect and all the other stakeholders, that had an effort on there. And it was, I was certainly praying. I was certainly hoping, we were going to win. I never would have bet the farm on 60-40, but it really shows the collective efforts of everybody to educate, to communicate, all of us doing our part within our various regions to get this over the finish line. So when that casino's opened on Grant, I'm going to go up there since we're so lucky, deposit a couple of dollars. And what I'd like to do is I'll entertain a motion for the accountability pledge. But then at the end of that, we have a special toast, non-alcoholic toast, congratulating everybody and thanking everybody for the success of our next 20 years. But most importantly, the RTA board accountability to the public, who really, at the end of the day, we're all just a piece of it, but the most important person was the voters. And to live up to that accountability, I loved, the previous almost finished presentation really of getting right out of the box. I know we'll hopefully see signs up, RTA next on there. And to your point, Mr. Ortega, to get as many of these things finished or at least started by that 15th year. So we're closing out in our fourth quarter and not maybe, starting or talking about something in the 19th year. I think we can really do a great job because, as Mr. Maxwell points out all the time, there's never going to be a cavalry coming. You heard from Mr. Rossi, you heard from yourself. I would expect we're never going to have enough money, and we're always going to have to be asking if we want to invest in ourselves and keep our infrastructure up and move our economy forward, connecting families and friends and goods and services and getting to work, on a much more timely basis. So I'm very excited about that. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt a accountability pledge.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, if we can take a small recess, we
Yes,
do
we'll
have
set up the
we'll
table.
set up the table and I'd like all of you to sign it. We would like a photo op there. And we also have some glasses that we'd like you to make a toast on.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you. back to 5 to finish. And then I did want to acknowledge, this is not Lisa Ann sitting here, so I wanted to thank Mr. Kramer for being here today, filling in for her. So tell her she missed the toast and the celebration.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, we'll try to wrap this up quickly. There is no report from TMC or CART today that was listed. So what I'd like to do is just give you an overview with Rick leading the charge here on the closeout of 2006. And this will set the stage for what you're going to start to see every quarter, because this is really the quarterly analysis. So you might see it a little different, but this is really the bottom line here. Go ahead, Rick.
You got it. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Chair, members of the board. I am going to respectfully fly through this fairly quickly, but even though we're going to go through quickly, high clip level, I do want you to see how far into the weeds we are going on all this, how deep our analysis takes us, and how thorough we're going to be in our overall overview of all this effort. So Issa, if I've got control. Said, okay, purpose of this quarterly effort is really to provide you with an update on our program, project activity, financial activities, and to give you a preview of any real challenges we see coming down the pipeline, as well as any opportunities that will present themselves that we can take advantage of. So it's really to kind of making sure it's got that holistic approach on this. We will go through, like I said, a high clip overview of the highlights, the financial aspects, projects and programs, and then we can answer any questions at the tail end if you do have any. First of all, foremost is our accountability. You've heard a lot of talk about that, and we plan to use several means and methods on that. These quarterly analysis and reporting efforts that we're doing to all the various entities, as Mike mentioned on that, they are open to the public. The materials are posted online, so the full degree of transparency is there available for everybody to look at. We have our annual report that's published at the end of the year. We have our regular audits that are performed, a financial on a yearly basis, as well as the performance audit that's performed every 5 years. That material is available online, posted as well. So we have full disclosure on all those aspects of it. So closing out, as Mike set the stage with, we're going to be closing out the 2006 plan. The key thing and to focus on this is that the regional funds closing out these projects are programmed through fiscal year 29, while the regional funds for RTA Next are committed through fiscal year 31. That's why you see the difference in years and timeframes on that. So it's just reaffirming that the regional funds are going to be utilized to take us through 21 or through 31. I'm sorry. Also, with the passage now of RTA Next, our 7 deferred projects, plus that categorical item related to bike and pedestrian activity closeouts on that, we're going to include those in the RTA Next component going forward. Since those were voted on, acted on in that, we're going to make sure we highlight during that portion. Let's see, with that, I'd like to turn it over to James Tao. He's our RTA's budget manager to provide an overview of our financial element. James, it's all yours.
Right. Thank you, Rick, Mr. Chair. In 2006, the RTA plan projected excise tax collections of $2.1 billion over 20 years, but this projection was based on constant or 2006 dollars. There was also a nominal forecast that projected actual annual collections adjusted for inflation. This forecast projected $2.7 billion over the plan's duration. Once we wrap up the current fiscal year, our actual excise tax collections over the life of the RTA will be about $1.7 billion, or about $1 billion less than the nominal forecast in 2006. The fiscal 2026 budget projected excise tax collections of $131 million. Through January, we were trending about 3.5% below forecast, with revenues thus far of about $74 million. For FY 2026, the board approved RTA budget totaled $73,643,000. Of that, $19.3 million went to roadway, while almost $38 million was budgeted for environmental and economic vitality and transit operations. The remaining $16.5 million was allocated to debt service and administrative costs. The budget surplus of nearly $54 million is anticipated at the conclusion of the fiscal year. Previous budgets provided about $222 million of committed encumbered dollars anticipated to carry forward to fiscal year 2026, awaiting project activities. With an FY 26 budget of under $74 million, expenditures through the second quarter of the fiscal year were just under $30 million, outpacing the budget, meaning that we should see some of the encumbered fund balance expended during the fiscal year, which is a positive sign as it relates to project activities. Next slide, please. The 10 remaining RTA 1 roadway projects will be funded with a total excise tax fund balance of over $400 million, which includes the $220 million or so of encumbered fund balance. These projects are programmed to be fully budgeted and in construction within the next 5 years. In addition to excise tax fund balance, $140 million in regional funds will be programmed on RTA 1 projects through FY 2029. That's coupled with a regional fund balance of about $114 million, most of which is already spoken for. Our continuing revenue collections, projected regional dollars through FY 29, and existing fund balances should provide over $670 million to complete remaining RTA projects. So with that, Rick, I'll pass it back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. I'm going to now provide kind of a summary going down now into the element level. I want to hit upon a couple of key things. This I will continue to go through kind of at a high clip pace, but we can answer any questions you've got at the end, and future presentations will show the capabilities and how hard into the weeds we've gone on this. So at a summary level across all 4 major elements, closing these out, the big takeaway on this is we have 17 active roadway projects right now. We have 7 on the deferred projects that were funded through RTA Next. We'll be talking about those as we go forward with RTA's next efforts. We have 10 under the environmental and economic vitality. These are your bike and ped projects out there. So this has got the activity up there. We'll talk more about what activities are going on, what's underway, and what's going to be coming up, as well as a wildlife linkage project we have as well. Our safety element has been closed out on this, and our transit activities are funded through the end of the plan, combining fixed route or consisting of fixed route, dial-a-ride, paratransit, and then our reimbursements for our volunteer drivers on this. So specifically now hitting upon the roadway element projects. I won't read each one. The key takeaway on all this, if you will, soundbite that's important to remember is we have 5 active projects right now that are wrapping up over the next several months on this. They're going full speed ahead. And this addresses the question that people raised is, I don't see anything happening. There's lots happening. Don't worry. Got enough going on, plus we got more coming. So you'll see these activities. Particularly, it's important to note on projects like Downtown Links and Grant Road, a lot of that paving activity is going to be starting here very shortly. They're going to be wrapping up those and bringing those roadways onto the system and opening those up over the next several weeks as well. Projects that are now going to begin construction. We had 5 that we're wrapping up. We're putting 6 out there on deck. Starting with 22nd Street Bridge, we were all at the groundbreaking ceremony. That's underway on there. The other one that's critical to note on this is the Grant Road at Union Pacific. That project's going to involve a full closure. We've been working closely with the tribes on that one to coordinate that between city, RTA, the Pascuyaki with their casino opening operations, and we've got a seamless integrated plan on that. It will be a full closure. It will be impact, but it's going to be minimized and shorten the duration, and we beat the timeline. We will open that project completed before the casino operations open and go active on that. So this shows you the list of jobs that are all coming up and the approximate durations on those. This shows you the design and right-of-way activity that's going on with several projects now, primarily these 3 that are going forward with all activities underway on those as well. I won't bother to go through all those, but you can see that list. And then we have RTA Next funding on 2 other projects on Tangerine and Grant Road that was added in there. You guys remember we were talking about that. That was to maintain the accelerated pace of activity. Those projects are underway. Teams are full speed ahead. We needed that complementary funding. That's now in place. Teams are moving forward on that full speed ahead as we speak. These are the 5 remaining projects that had the significant scope change on this. We're all familiar with all these. We're going to be working closely with the jurisdictions. You heard Mike talk about, we're offering pre-authorizations on this. We're going to be working with the project teams and the jurisdictions to get these activities ramped up and running. I still clutch my chest every time he says we need to get these done in the first 5 years. That's the challenge issued, but challenge accepted. We'll be working to do that. We want to fulfill that request. We also have a number of bike and pedestrian pathways, just in case folks are worried that we're only concentrating on roadway element. We have 3 that are identified that are underway now, or will be starting here construction shortly on these 3 corridor areas, focusing on multi-use paths or bike boulevard improvements, as well as then another laundry list of projects that are coming on as well. You notice a lot of these have a fall starting time frame on that. It's associated with some of the federal funding that we've been able to leverage, apply, and utilize on these, and they require that authorization advertisement period that typically takes place over the summer, and then construction activities anticipated to fire up in the fall. The last project up there is the Wildlife Linkage Project, and we're working closely with the TO Nation on that one, as well as ADOT on our partners to get that item going forward, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. With that, I'd like to introduce and hand it off to Thomas Robertson. He's our Public Transportations Management Analyst. He'll provide an update on our transit element. Thomas, it's all yours.
Of course. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, sir. Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas Robertson here with the transportation side of the PAG and RTA. Here to spread the good word about the public transportation services we provide to the people of Pima County. Just some housekeeping notes to get with. So last year we did swap our contractor from We Drive You Services to MTM Services. Has been a great boom so far in our current fiscal year. Otherwise, in the last 20 years, we have spent $527 million either through our partnership with SunTran and the city or through our own operations of Sun Shuttle Services. And that's going to be our dial-a-ride, fixed route, as well as our paratransit services. Next slide, kindly, Rick. Of course. And through the last 20 years and our partnerships, we have provided 41.6 million trips to the people of Pima County, and that is 41.6 million times the people of Pima County have been able to get to their doctor's appointments, have been able to get to work, go to the movies, whatever they need to do to live their lives. Next slide, kindly. And we're committed to doing that on time. In the last year, we have significantly improved our on-time performance. And over the next 20 years, with the passage of RTA Next, we are both committed and privileged to getting the people of Pima County where they need to be on time. And I think that sums everything up. Back to you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the elements that we're going to be introducing into this as part of our overall tracking performance and monitoring on this is our performance matrix. You heard Mike talk about that. That's going to be a provision and a condition associated with our IGAs. This is a tool we've developed in conjunction with the jurisdictions and with the project teams, which basically tracks a handful of key performance indicators, financial as well as schedule-based. So this way we can watch it, we can track it, we can report on it, identify areas where we need to jump in, possibly help out, bring resources as a region, all those type of things to ensure that our delivery efforts are progressing and that we can hit that 18-year delivery timeframe that Mike's laid out for all of us to hit. Just the key takeaway on this is the coloring scheme is important on this. Green indicates that basically we're going straight forward, everything's in go mode. Yellow indicates things we want to bring to your attention, want to highlight to you, want to give you a preview of that, or there may be some simple administrative functions we need to perform on that. Red is going to have a little bit more seriousness to it. We need to maybe take action, identify key things that we need to do or ways we need to respond. With that, we've asked our jurisdictional partners to join us in our project overview. In the interest of time, we'll walk through the projects. You'll get an idea of how far we are diving into this and the breadth of coverage we've got and we're prepared to talk to, but I will ask them to only kind of hit one highlight with each project. We've got Fausto Burrell, Public Works Director from the town of Marana, and then Jim DeGrood from the City of Tucson's Department of Transportation and Mobility, Deputy Director. So with that, Fausto, if you would, what's a quick highlight you would like to share on Tangerine Road Phase 2A?
Thank you, Rick. Chair, board members, I'm happy to share that we've reached substantial completion on this project this last month. Final completion anticipated in April, with the only caveat being that the railroad crossing is still a project that we are working on. We've submitted 90% railroad plans a week ago, and we're having active discussions with the railroad, and we continue to move forward. One quick side note is adjacent to this project, the town is actively working on what we call interim improvements on the Tangerine TI. It'll be similar to what you see at Cotero Road, and we are actively working on that, and we have an outreach with that, the Tangerine Squeeze. So, thank you.
Thanks, Fausto. Jim?
Okay, on Mr. Chair, members of the board, on 22nd Street, we're currently under construction, as you all know. Removals will be beginning next week. The street, 22nd Street, was closed formally on March 3rd, and as the contractor is preparing for demolition. Thank you for the TIP amendment and IGA amendment that you were approved earlier today. That adds 11.462 million to our war chest for delivering this project, allows us to restore our contingency amount that was very weak and cover our prior design expenses. Continuing on to Silverbell Road, we do now have an AGD, which is an approved jurisdictional delineation from the Army Corps of Engineers on this project. They determined that there are no waters of the United States on this project. We previously had been subject to Army Corps 404 permits. We have Desert Archaeology under contract, and we have transitioned their contract from Pima County to the city of Tucson. And plans are at 100%. We're working through some final issues with Tucson Water about cover protection on their 42-inch transmission main. But we expect to do bid as advertisement yet this spring with construction award this summer. Continuing on to Valencia Road, this project is federalized. We expect 100% plans by the end of June, and today's IGA funds the remaining design work and local match for the federal STBG funding on the project. Houghton Road, project's at 100% design. We're finalizing property owner modifications. We have utility activities are expected to be concluded this summer. And we are updating our 404 permit on that as well. That's in review right now. We believe that we'll be able to get this approved as a aquatic delineation. We expect to bid this project this summer with construction starting in the fall. Okay. I'm gonna, let's see, we've got 22nd Street. 22nd Street, this project's 100% submittal is due next week. TEP plans are being reviewed and relocation work is about to be scheduled. We have easement and acquisitions underway. Construction is planned to begin in the fall of 2027 with completion in 2030. On Harrison Road is being delivered by a progressive design build project. We're in negotiation currently with Borderland Somas team. We expect to award that contract in late spring. We expect a 6 to 9 month design phase, a GMP at the end of the design phase, and start construction in early 2027. On to Grant Road, this would be phases 5 and 6. We are at 90%, plans advancing to 100%. Right-of-way consultants are on board. We're working collaboratively with the RTA on right-of-way acquisition. We are focusing on acquisition east of Wilson Avenue, as this section needs to have a significant TEP relocation on it. We're also beginning next week with planning to begin the public outreach on noise wall discussions. So that still is ahead of us. We expect construction to begin in the second quarter of 2028. And First Avenue, we thank you for your approval of the IGA to fund the 30% plans that we will deliver in June. We believe that probably will be, after the public outreach for that, that'll probably be the first of the projects that comes before you with the 30% review approval that we'll be going forward with. And finally, we are continuing to work on various bike and ped projects. We are working to layer in funding from multiple sources. We believe we'll be able to get all of these delivered with adequate funding.
Thank you, Jim. This last one I talked about earlier and I alluded to is the wildlife crossing. This is out at the west by the Kip Peak area out on the Teo Nation. This is an active project that we've been working closely out there to resolve some concerns, items, and issues that have arisen regarding maintenance of ongoing activities out there. Because this is specialized type of features. This isn't your normal everyday type of thing that we run into. So it requires a little bit more intensive work. So we're working with ADOT and the TO to make sure we get those reconciled. Parallel with that, we've been working closely with the nation to solicit input feedback from the affected communities out there and make sure we're incorporating that into our design efforts as well. So we're expecting this project then to move forward and get design activities reinitiated, and we've adjusted construction to align up with that timeframe to accommodate all that. So one of the things you would see on future projects going or on future updates going forward is going to be then a recommendation or a summary of it. The only one we had at this point in time, which you've already taken action on, was the approval of the IGA specific to the 22nd Street Bridge. You heard Jim talk about how we had to work together to identify additional money, how we had to do some exchanges on that, but we were able to make all projects whole, fulfill the amount added in there so everything could proceed as originally planned. With this, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Hyun-Soo No to talk a little bit about he's our data science team administrator, and he'll provide an update on our population projections for the region. Hyun-Soo, it's all yours.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I will provide a brief update on population projections. Our population projections rely on two primary data sources, and the first, the University of Arizona Eller College of Management, Economic and Business Research Center, known as EBRC. EBRC updates its economic outlook quarterly and annually, producing demographic and socioeconomic trends and forecasts, including population and employment projections. And I'd like to just remind you that the revenue forecast for RTA Next use the EBRC projections. The second source is the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity, known as AOEO, which produces population estimates and the projections for economic and demographic research and analysis. AOEO's estimates and projections are required to be used by state agencies for any development of population estimates and projections. AOEO develops annually July 1st the population estimates and produces population projections in the second, fifth, and eighth year of each decade. Now, with this background, please look at the chart. First, you will see the population projections from 2022 AOEO series and the 2023 EBRC series. These two projections track closely with one another. And on the next slide, however, the EBRC produced a new forecast using 2025 as a base year. Here, 2025 EBRC MED, the medium series is shown in orange, which was used for the RTA Next revenue forecast. This update reduced the population projections from 1.23 million to 1.21 million by 2046. And next slide. In 2025, and AOEO also released a new long-term projection through 2060, as shown in here solid green. AOEO estimates a population of 1.15 million by 2046, which is roughly 56,000 lower than the 2025 EBRC medium series. The 2025 AOEO projections incorporate the most recent demographic trends, including lower birth rates, higher death rates, and migration patterns, increasingly influenced by a growing share of individuals aged 65 and older. And moving forward, and next slide. When comparing the 2025 AOEO projections with the EBRC series, you will see that for the first decade, the AOEO projections fall between the EBRC medium series and the EBRC low series, which is relevant to the pessimistic scenario of the RTA Next revenue forecast. After 2036, they align more closely with the EBRC low series. It is important to note that AOEO and EBRC use independent models to produce their population projections. County-level population forecasts are one of the many inputs of a revenue forecast, and the uncertainty associated with these variables increases significantly over longer time horizons. To conclude, and currently AOEO's projection is not a major factor in the RTA Next planning horizon. However, comparisons between projection sources will continue to be incorporated into regular quarterly performance monitoring for various committees and the RTA board. This is the update on population projections. I return it back to you, Rick.
Thank you, Hinsu. So in closing, that's what we want to show you. This is what our quarterly format would look like going forward. The one big thing is we expect to evolve from more of an activity base, which was a summary of what it's going to take to close out, into more of here's what we've got coming. Here's a preview of some of the items, issues that we think we're going to be running into, or we'll be talking about performance aspects and seeing where we're going with things, where we may need specialized assistance, or where we need to come together and provide any kind of resource help to any of the projects going forward. Yeah, the team, thank you all for your attention on that. Mike, I'll turn it back to you before any questions from the board.
Thank you, Rick. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think you can see this is really the framework for how we will be bringing quarterly discussions to you. In my opinion, the more important slides are that spreadsheet, that one that has the colors on it. They're all green today. We expect that might change over time, but that'll give us a roadmap on things we need to focus on. The other slide was that second to last slide where you saw the population projections. Those are the kinds of things we've got to pay attention to. We've done the same thing with the revenue projections. And so when we get into RTA next, we'll show you those as well so that you can see. And if we need to make adjustments, we do that early as opposed to down the road. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation. I'm sorry it took longer than 10 minutes.
That's okay.
But you can see the magnitude of the information.
And for my colleagues, Mr. Ortega and I are having a conversation about maybe from that accountability standpoint of making staff available at each of our municipalities, maybe once a year to advise, because, you know, we're living in this stuff, right? But the rest of our council members don't get the benefit of hearing this. So we're having those discussions as well. So, you know, stay tuned for that. And I did see a couple of ones on there, a 3-year time window, which is a little breathtaking. When you're talking about a project for 3 years, I mean, can we consider that's all inclusive? That's like right away acquisition. I'm just not hoping that it's a 3-year like shutdown or whatever it may be, but if you could just maybe touch on that.
Sure, absolutely. So keep in mind that that's the entire project
Right.
from infancy or really the kickoff through ribbon cutting.
Okay.
So there are some projects that are very complex.
Right.
I just had a conversation with Supervisor Hines about some of the closures, and we're going to look at that as well because I think that is a concern. So one of the things that Jim mentioned was that Harrison Road Bridge project. It's an alternative delivery. We've not used that before. We're going to push the envelope on using alternative delivery methods up to and including full closures. If we can figure out ways to do that where we minimize the impact, that's really the opportunity. Because if you try to keep it open like Grant Road, then you're extending the period, you know, exponentially.
Right.
And so the conversation is a much, you know, really a lot of focus on trying to compress those timeframes as much as possible.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Item 7 was future agenda. I think the biggest future agenda is our retreat that we're looking at. And, you know, we
Sure,
could, yes,
sure.
I'm sorry.
I was curious if we could still ask questions about the presentation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that actually, Ms. Ortega kind of spoke to mine. I was going to ask Mr. DeGrood though, because I live downtown and lots of my constituents are downtown, and 22nd is how a lot of us get in and out of downtown. I'm just curious about that 3-year timeline for the 22nd Street Bridge, and if it's like, is that a complete closure for 36 months? And if that has to be 3 years?
Mr. Chair, Council or Supervisor Hines, unfortunately, we are anticipating a 3-year closure on this. We will look to every opportunity to expedite it. We're a bit at the mercy of working with the railroad on some of the timeframes on this, but our design team time is money, and everybody profits by doing it quicker. So we will be working our best to try to accelerate it where we can.
Great, thank you. And then with regard to the excise tax revenue falling short by a few percent, that was from January, but that's based on like the 2006 projections, right? Or did we revise those?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Hines, no, those have been updated.
Oh, okay.
So we were using more recent forecasts.
Got it. And then my last question from the population estimates, what does the AOEO and EBRC population estimate for us right this second say for Pima County?
So both are actually just the we can use, and but for the revenue forecast, the EBRC was used, and so that's actually just the formal one, and used for the RTA next. But the AOEO, and we use that, and for our just the planning, the purpose, more likely.
Do you want us to go back on the slide, Supervisor?
I just want to know, what is our population right now?
What's the number?
Oh, right now,
number?
I'm sorry.
That's
And
okay.
Let you
yeah,
go back
so
up.
it's a little bit more than just the 1 million and the 1.1 million.
So it is over 1.1 million.
It's less than 1.1 million.
Less.
Yeah.
Okay, it has to do with the Superior Court. Never mind. Thank you.
Yes, Board Member Winfield.
In the early in the presentation about the revenue shortfall of a billion. So as a result of that, the council board agreed to sweep PAG funds. So I think that began in 2014. That will continue through.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Winfield, that'll continue through 2031. So the first year that we'll call it the PAG regional monies that are available is 2032. that fiscal year.
And is there a formal adopted policy by the board that clarifies when that sweep will end?
Mr. Chairman, actually, it's in the RTA next plan. We said in the plan specifically that the regional funding would be through 2031. And so it's codified now by the voter.
And if it hadn't passed, it would have been almost
A long
endless,
time.
right? A long time, right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Nope. Back to item 7, future agenda items. I just mentioned the retreat. I think out of the retreat, we'll probably have some other things that will come out of that, which I think will be a useful exercise. Anything else? Could we go to the order? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion.
Second. We're adjourned.
Entirely too short. We just had an 8.5.